Please watch the video until the end of it. The final chapter brings together all the threads and is the heart of this story. Chapter 1: The Box by the Window. In a small coastal town where the Atlantic breathed slowly against weathered docks, an old man sat by a window and arranged envelopes he had written decades before. Elias had lived long enough to know the geometry of regret, the way a single unsent word could fan out into a life altered. He had placed each letter in a tin box and labeled the top with a date, a place, a memory. He did not expect anyone to read them, not really. It was habit more than plan, the careful preservation of a heart that had loved with stubborn clarity. Across town, Claire, an art student with paint under her nails and a belief in impossible compositions, rented a small room above a used bookshop. She found the tin by chance in an estate sale, drawn to the handwriting, steady, deliberate, colored with flourishes that suggested both caution and courage. The letters were addressed to a woman named Nora, full of small domestic miracles and grand confessions, and they had been written over 50 years. Claire read until morning light thinned the ink, and with each line she felt a thread stretch from the past into her present, warm and urgent. Chapter 2: Meeting at the Fair. Jonah earned his living on dirt and thunder, a young man who sat astride bulls that bucked like untamed weather. He carried a cowboy hat and a stubbornness that belonged to fields and seasons. When his truck broke down at the county fair, he wandered past the exhibition tents and stumbled into Claire's modest studio booth, where she was showing a collection of small paintings inspired by the letters. Jonah stopped because the paintings were of cows and open fields, and of a woman standing at a window, her hair a loose braid like a river. Claire noticed him noticing. He asked questions about the letters with the frank curiosity of someone who had lived with risk and therefore knew how to recognize what mattered. She told him she had found the box and that the letters felt like a map. Their conversation moved with the ease of two people who had been lonely for particular kinds of company, and by the time the fair lights dimmed they had arranged to meet again, not for the thrill of rodeo or the hush of a gallery, but for the slow labor of knowing each other. Chapter 3: Unfolding Lives. The letters became a private curriculum. Each evening, when Jonah returned from practice and Claire from classes, they read aloud passages that shaped the world Elias had inhabited. Nora wrote back in fragments that leaned toward the domestic, recipes, a description of a rainstorm, a small outrage about a social slight. Elias's replies were broader, full of the geography of a life, a job at a factory that shut down and left behind humming machines, the ways neighborhood laughter receded when a war took sons away, the turning point when he chose to keep a love rather than chase a dream. Claire painted the letters into a series she called Habitations of the Heart. Jonah, whose life had been measured in seconds of balance and pain, was learning new measures, the weight of a phrase, the cadence of reconciliation, the tenderness in regret. For Claire, Jonah offered the physicality of a life she respected. For Jonah, Claire offered a language for feelings he had never been taught to translate. Chapter 4: The Storm and the Decision. Rodeo season brought crowds and bright banners and a scent of hot dust that lived in Jonah's clothes long after the rides. One night, in a stadium where applause was a currency and everything could change in a heartbeat, Jonah misjudged a swing and fell hard. The injury was not career-ending in immediate words, but the doctor spoke of fragile things, ligaments, the slowness of healing, the possibility that his body might never again obey an older kind of command. Claire sat beside him in a hospital room that smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee. They learned, together, the art of waiting. Jonah wrestled with identity. Was he only what he wrote, or could he translate that courage into something else? The letters of Elias offered a kind of counsel, not instructions, but examples of a life where choices were forged by an allegiance to love rather than to self-preservation alone. Claire, who had once thought love must be quiet and safe, found herself wanting to make room for risk and to build scaffolding around it. Elias's handwriting suggested reconciliation instead of regret. He had, in one letter, described a decision to stay put for a partner whose health failed and to find, in the ordinary rooms of home, enough adventure to fill a lifetime. Claire read it to Jonah in the hush between beeps, and Jonah felt something shift, the future no longer a narrow track he must ride or fall from, but a field he could shape with other hands. Chapter 5: The Exhibition. Months later, Claire prepared a small exhibition that paired her paintings with excerpts from the letters. She invited Elias, who had recently moved into a modest nursing home 2 towns over, and Jonah, now walking with the slow confidence of a man rebuilding. The gallery was not large, but it was full of an audience that had come for beauty and stayed for the stories. Elias arrived with the quiet certainty of a man reconciled to what he had been and what he might yet be. When he stood before a painting of Nora at a window, his lined face smoothed for a moment. He read the plaque that quoted his own words and realized that his life, distilled into sentences, had become something larger than memory. Claire watched Jonah watch Elias, a small electric thing passing between them, gratitude, awe, the recognition of histories that could teach the living. At the reception, strangers asked Elias questions, and he answered, not to perform but to connect. He told them about the tiny rituals that had kept 2 people tethered across years, tea at 4, the same hymn, a particular book read aloud during winter. His hands trembled only slightly as he described the day he decided to remain. It was not a heroic tale in the way a movie would stage heroics. It was the bravery of choosing a steady love over a ferocious ambition, of learning to make wonder out of repetition. Chapter 6, A Quiet Legacy. The evenings that followed were gentler. Jonah adapted his courage to a new kind of stage, coaching young writers, teaching them how to fall and how to rise again with less damage. Claire's paintings grew bolder, filled with scenes that honored both the dusty vitality of the rodeo and the luminous interior life Elias had preserved. Elias wrote fewer letters now. The tin box had become an artifact whose contents had already altered 2 lives in the present. When Elias passed, quietly in his sleep, the town gathered not in loud mourning but in shared stories. Claire and Jonah organized a small memorial with readings from the letters, and they placed one of Nora's old shawls across Elias's hands as a gesture both literal and symbolic. The shawl smelled faintly of lavender and of the sea, like the scene where past and present met. On the day they scattered Elias's ashes by the shore he had loved, Jonah spoke of the containers people keep for love, boxes of letters, rooms, paintings, and the bodies that hold memories. Claire listened and thought of all she had learned, that love is not a single gesture but a series of deliberate returns, that art can hold what language cannot, and that a life shared can lengthen the reach of time itself. They walked home hand in hand, carrying a small book of excerpts from Elias's letters that Claire had published. It was not a bestseller, it did not have to be. In the months that followed, the book found its way into unexpected hands, a young couple building a house, an old widow looking for company, a teenager with questions about how to keep a heart intact. The letters accomplished their last work not by changing fate, but by offering maps of devotion, compromise, stubborn joy. If you enjoyed this tale, please subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, give the video a like, leave a comment sharing your favorite line, and share the video with someone who loves stories of enduring love.